My mother has always been extremely overprotective of me. Even now in my early 20s, she can't just leave me the hell alone. I carry a lot of resentment towards her because of that. Among a plethora of other things, she always manages to find a way to get under my skin. But this time she's taken it too far. I could be a homeless college dropout for all I care. I want absolutely nothing to do with her. Even as a child, I knew that our relationship was different. My dad passed away before I was born, so it's always just been the two of us, which is why she's on my ass 24/7. Her family is all estranged, so I'm the only one around to take her shit. Well, I have had it. I'm done. She can die in a hole for all I care. I remember the day that I first realized something was off. I was sitting in the passenger seat of Mom's SUV, gleefully chomping away at my chicken nuggets from my Happy Meal when it happened. Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers started playing over the radio. I loved that song at the time, so naturally I began to sing along with the lyrics. And if you want these kind of dreams, it's Californication. Smack. Mom slammed on the brakes as a searing pain began to course through my cheek. Tears welled in my eyes as I turned to face her. Why did you hit me? I choked out through strangled sobs. Why did you hear that word, Rachel? Who taught you to use nasty language like that? Do you know what that word means? That is no way for a young lady to speak, she spat, steam practically wafting from her ears. What word? I didn't say a bad word, Mommy, I wailed, still trying to comprehend the hurt and betrayal I felt in that moment. You know exactly which word I'm talking about. Mom glanced around, as if she was afraid that someone would hear before she hissed, fornication. But it's the song name. I don't know what a fornication is, I cried, gently caressing my stinging cheek. Just then, Anthony Kiedis chimed back in over the radio, proving my point. And buy me a star on the boulevard, it's Californication. Mom's furious expression suddenly melted away. My little heart thumped wildly in my chest, still terrified of how she'd react. Well, I suppose that's okay, then. Quit your crying and eat your Happy Meal. It didn't hurt that bad, she said, resuming our drive home. I have countless other stories like that one. That's just the one that sticks out to me the most, because it's the exact moment that I realized my mother wasn't normal. Of course, they probably wouldn't openly discuss it if they had, but I'd never heard any other kids talk about their parents slapping them for singing along to a pop song. And unfortunately for me, it didn't stop there. That kind of erratic behavior became a constant. Mom would hit me or berate me for some strange atrocity she'd assumed I committed, only for her to be completely wrong. She slapped me around quite a bit after that, but the part that hurt the most, she never apologized to me once. She still hasn't. Not one single time in my entire 20 years of existence. Her bizarre accusations didn't begin to subside until my teen years, when I hit a growth spurt, when I was suddenly bigger than her, when I could finally fight back. I was 16 the first time I hit my mother. She was screaming at me. I mean, really just going to town. She claimed that I was acting like a whore, flirting with men in public. All I'd done was smile at the cashier ringing up our groceries. That was it. No words exchanged, no lustful glances, nothing. Just one simple, innocent smile. I did not raise a slut. Each word was accompanied by a violent strike to the face. Tears flowed freely down my burning cheeks as I vainly attempted to shield myself. It didn't mean anything, Mom, I swear. I just wanted to be nice. That's all. She crinkled her nose in disgust. Mom didn't believe a word I said. She never did. Lies. All of it. I'll show you what happens to lying little whores. She reared back, preparing to hit me even harder. Something in me broke. I couldn't take it anymore. I was so fed up with being smacked around like a pinball just for being myself, for existing. I couldn't even enjoy a quick trip to the grocery store without my mother finding a reason to beat the daylights out of me. It wasn't fair. I was sick and tired of living every day in fear, praying for the off chance that my sorry excuse for a mother might be in an agreeable mood. I'd had it. Slap. Mom looked like a deer in headlights. I don't think she'd ever expected me to stand up for myself. She'd spent so much time beating me down that she hadn't even stopped to consider that maybe one day she'd be the victim, not me. I think I need to lie down. With that, she despondently wandered to her bedroom, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. Tears still streamed down my face, but they weren't pain cries any longer. These were tears of actual, genuine relief. After all the years of torment, I'd finally found a way to end my suffering, or so I thought. A few more incidents like that, and the physical abuse quickly fizzled out. I was taller than Mom by that point, and though it wasn't much, I was starting to put on a little bit of muscle from joining the school's swim team. Compare that to Mom's tiny, wiry frame, and physically, she was no match for me. Things finally started taking a turn for the better. Mom was actually starting to treat me like a human being. Once I started giving her a taste of her own medicine, she decided that it didn't taste too good. For a while, it felt like things were looking up, until they weren't. Mom was always very interested in who I was hanging around, classmates, coworkers, potential love interests. She wanted every detail on who they were, how we'd met, and what their intentions were with me. Honestly, it was exhausting, even more so when I noticed said people starting to distance themselves. At first, I thought that I was just unlikable, a complete screw-up. I thought I was such a poor excuse for a human being that not a single person wanted anything to do with me. Yeah, Mom had really whittled down my self-esteem with all her attacks. People were dropping me faster than a hot potato in the summer heat, and I needed answers. Hey Julie, can I ask you something? Julie had been my best friend. We'd known each other since we were 5 years old. But, just like most people in my life, she had drifted away too. Her betrayal hurt the most. I just couldn't fathom why she was suddenly acting so cold to me. It's not like she was more popular than me or anything. No, on the contrary, we were both outcasts, which made it sting even more when she abandoned me. Maybe I'd been too optimistic, thinking that she might still care about me deep down, that she was still the friend I knew and loved, that she'd help me in my time of need. I should have known better. Julie responded to my question by frantically stuffing her things into her backpack. I'm sorry, Rachel, I don't have time. I instinctively grabbed her arm. As she turned to leave, Julie glanced back at me. She was trying to act pretentious, but her mask was beginning to crack. Julie, please, this is serious, I begged, locking eyes with her. Her bottom lip quivered. As she tried to maintain a stoic expression, she wanted to open up to me. She really did. But whatever was holding her back won out in the end. Leave me alone. Don't ever talk to me again, you new freak. That word, it felt as if someone had driven a stake through my heart. My hand slipped away and Julie bolted down the hall, bawling. I couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my own cheeks, either. Why was this happening to me? I wouldn't receive my answer until years down the road. The remainder of my high school career wasn't easy, but somehow I powered through. I was able to scrounge up enough money from my part-time job at the grocery store to move out of Mom's house after graduation. She wasn't happy about it, but I had to get out. Our relationship had been rocky on the best of days. Once I moved into my cramped little one-bedroom apartment, it seemed as if things were finally going my way. I was taking courses at the local community college, and I'd begun working full-time at the grocery store to cover my expenses. I was out on my own. Well, sort of. Mom stopped by all the time with how horribly she'd treated me. You're probably wondering why I hadn't completely cut her out of my life yet. While it was true that I was working a full-time job, I still wasn't making much money. So, yeah, I was still financially dependent on my mother. I wish I would have cut contact sooner. Anyway, once I had my own place, I decided to dip my toes into the dating pool. I wasn't having much luck meeting guys in person, so I downloaded the festering cesspit known as Tinder. I know, not my wisest decision. I began to realize that I had about as much luck with that as I had with keeping friends. None. It was strange. I would really hit it off with a guy, only to plan a date and get ghosted. Every single time, like clockwork. We'd pick a time and location. Both of us would say we were on our way, then nada. Radio silence. Complete ghost town. I was starting to get really depressed as a result. It was around that time that Mom started making beef stew, and a lot of it. She would bring me multiple Tupperware containers of the stuff, to the point that I was running out of room in my fridge. I threw out the first few batches. I felt shitty enough about having to rely on my mother for money, but food too. Not to mention, I didn't really want to give Mom the satisfaction. Throwing out her cooking was my way of giving her the middle finger, but eventually I caved. I didn't do much cooking myself, and it did save me some money. So, I tried her cooking, fully expecting it to taste like slop from a middle school cafeteria. But to my utter shock, it was good. The meat was very succulent. Though it looked like beef, it tasted more like pork. Nevertheless, it was heavenly. It melted in my mouth with every bite. I asked Mom where she bought it once. She just smiled at me knowingly and said, "I'll tell you someday. When you're older." When I'm older. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Whatever. Must be Mom being weird again, I thought to myself. The whole thing was strange. But honestly, I'd assumed that the beef stew was the beginning of Mom's descent into madness. It was her way of finally losing her marbles, right? It had to be. Come to find out that it happened a long time ago. I didn't connect the dots until around a month before posting this. It was a Friday night, and yet again, I had hit it off with a boy. This one seemed promising, though, unlike the others, we had decided to FaceTime before planning a date, something I'd never even considered. Smooth was an understatement. My FaceTime call with Grayson couldn't have gone better. We talked about everything under the sun. We opened up to each other, and eventually, we delved into the topic of parents. Yeah, I'd rather not go into detail. My dad passed before I was born, and my mom has a few screws loose, I admitted, hoping that wouldn't scare him off. Really, I'm in the same boat. Well, sorta. My mom lost her battle to cancer when I was 12, and Dad has never been the same since. I still miss her a ton. I'm sorry. I know that's probably tough, I replied, thanking my lucky stars that he hadn't blocked me after my revelation. It's okay. I have this tattoo of a dove on the back of my hand to commemorate her. Doves were her favorite birds. I look at it every day to remind myself that she might be gone physically, but she'll always be with me in spirit, he said, proudly holding his tattoo up to the camera. The bird was ornately emblazoned into his skin. Every line was expertly crafted to form a beautiful ode to his deceased loved one. Underneath the artwork was a small golden banner that read Mom 1963 to 2013 gone, but never forgotten. Needless to say, I was smitten. A boy who understood my struggles, clicked with me on a personal level, and had a sweet side. Yes, please. We ended our call by setting up a dinner date for that Sunday. Grayson said he wanted to take me to some fancy Italian restaurant, but I talked him down to a more casual hole-in-the-wall Mexican place. By the end of it, I really liked this guy, and I wanted to prove that I was considerate. I waited on pins and needles for the day in question to arrive. When Sunday rolled around, I was giddy with excitement. I just knew that this time would be different, that he would be different. Oh, how wrong I was. I'd gotten myself all dolled up, ready to meet my knight in shining armor. Everything was going to plan. Grayson had even called me to tell me that he was on his way. I mean, what a gentleman, right? I parked my car at the restaurant and shot him a text to let him know that I'd arrived. Then I waited, and waited, and waited some more. After around 20 minutes of anxiety-induced stress, I finally conceded. Grayson wasn't coming. I was wrong about him. He was no different than every other guy who'd gotten cold feet. That broke me. I cried the whole way home, mascara running down my cheeks like rivers of ebony tears. Somehow, I made it home unscathed, and upon arrival, I immediately locked myself away in my room. I screamed and cried into my pillow until my throat was hoarse and my eyes were puffy. It wasn't just about Grayson. It was the fact that I was 20 years old and still hadn't gone on my first date, that I was a loser, that I didn't think I'd ever find anyone who wouldn't abandon me at the drop of a hat. Anyone except for my mother, that is. Once I finally managed to calm myself down, my appetite began to return. It was nearly midnight, and I hadn't eaten a morsel since lunch. I lazily emerged from my room and flicked on the kitchen light. There before me sat a fresh container of Mom's beef stew, one that hadn't been there when I got home. I shrugged and approached the counter it was sitting on. I hadn't given Mom a key to my apartment, but at that moment, I didn't care if she had one. I was just grateful for the hot meal that had magically spawned on my countertop. A note had been attached to the lid. I nearly threw it away without reading it, but I thought, what the heck? Mom was the only person in the world who at least sort of gave a damn about me. And she did bring me the food. After all, the least I could do was look at what she wanted to say. Rachel, I know you've been feeling down, so I brought you some of your favorite. I added a special new ingredient this time that I'm sure will wash all your sorrows down the drain. Enjoy. Love, Lem. My brows furrowed in confusion. She knew I was feeling down. How? I hadn't even told her about my date. She must have heard me crying when she broke in. That had to have been it. Without another thought, I tore off the lid, preparing to heat up the tantalizing amalgamation of meat and vegetables in the microwave. Instead, my head began to spin violently, and I vomited all over the linoleum floor. Dread consumed me like a python. I had to fight tooth and nail to fend off the urge to pass out, because there was a severed hand floating in the broth, one with an ornately designed dove emblazoned on the back.